close your eyes. Let the tension leave your shoulders. Let your breathing find its natural rhythm. Tonight, we're going to explore the shadows. Not the obvious darkness, not the surface level tragedy, but the deep secrets hidden in Hollow Knight's lore. The things the game doesn't tell you directly, the implications buried in item descriptions, the truths hidden in environmental details, the dark realities that exist beneath the already tragic story. These are the dark secrets of Hollow Knight. We're going to move through them slowly, carefully, the way you might explore a cave system, descending deeper with each revelation, understanding more with each secret uncovered. Some of these secrets are disturbing, some are tragic. Some recontextualize everything you thought you knew about the game, but we're going to explore them gently, in a way that's appropriate for sleep, letting each secret settle before moving to the next, allowing the darkness to be present without overwhelming you. Before we begin, I want to speak with you directly. If you're here, if you've chosen to spend your night falling asleep to the dark secrets of a game you love, then you're someone who appreciates depth, who wants to understand stories completely, who finds comfort in knowing the full truth, even when that truth is dark. If this video helps you sleep, if this careful exploration of Hollow Knight's darkest lore makes your night easier, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. Not because I need the number, but because there are others out there who would love this kind of deep, respectful, thorough lore content and don't know it exists. Subscribing helps them find it, helps the algorithm understand that slow, detailed, darkness-embracing videos are worth making. And if a particular secret resonates with you, if something makes you see the game differently, leave a comment. Just a word, a character, a revelation. Those comments matter, every single one. The video will be here whether you do any of this or not, but if you stay, if you return, I hope you will. Now. Let us descend into the darkness together. Let me tell you the dark secrets of Hollow Knight. The first secret is about the vessels, and it's darker than the game initially suggests. The Pale King and the White Lady didn't just create the vessels and throw them into the abyss, they created thousands of them, deliberately, systematically, as part of a planned process. This wasn't an accident, wasn't a desperate measure, wasn't a last resort. It was the plan from the beginning. The vessels were born from the union of the Pale King and the White Lady, but they were never meant to live. They were designed to be empty, designed to be hollow, designed to be tools. The Pale King knew that most would die. He expected it. He planned for it. The birthplace cutscene shows us this. We see the small vessels trying to climb out of the abyss, falling, dying, while the Pale King watches from above. He's not sad. He's not regretful. He's just watching, waiting for one to succeed, treating his children like a quality control process in a factory. This means the Pale King conceived thousands of children knowing they would die. He brought them into existence for the sole purpose of testing them, discarding the failures, and using the one that succeeded as a prison for a goddess. The White Lady participated in this. She's the mother of all the vessels, and she knew what would happen to them. She conceived them, gave birth to them, and allowed them to be thrown into the abyss. Her guilt, her self-imposed imprisonment in the Queen's gardens, suggests she understands the magnitude of what she did. But here's the darker secret. The vessels had to be their children specifically. Not just any bugs, not constructs like the King's molds, but actual offspring of the Pale King and the White Lady. Why? Because the vessel needed to be born of void and of higher beings, needed to have the potential for consciousness that could then be suppressed, needed to be something that could contain a god because it was partially divine itself, This means the Pale King and the White Lady chose to have children, real children, with the potential for thought and feeling. Specifically, so those children could be made hollow, could be turned into empty shells, could be used as containers. The cruelty of this is staggering. They didn't just sacrifice their children. They created their children to be sacrificed. Every vessel that died in the abyss was a child that was born specifically to die, that existed only to be tested and discarded, and there were thousands of them. The abyss is filled with their corpses, small broken shells piled on top of each other, a mass grave of children who never had a chance, who were born into a test they were designed to fail. The knight, the character you play as, is one of these discarded children. You're not a hero who chose to save the kingdom. You're a failed experiment that somehow survived, that escaped the abyss, that came back for reasons you don't understand. Every time you die in the game, every time you leave a shade behind, you're seeing what you are: void, darkness, the substance your parents threw you into to make you hollow. You're not a bug who contains void. You're void shaped like a bug, animated by the will of the abyss, driven by purposes that aren't entirely your own. The Hollow Knight, your sibling, the one who was chosen, is the same. It's void shaped like a bug, a child who succeeded at the test, who climbed out of the abyss, who was deemed worthy, and its reward for succeeding was to be sealed away with a goddess screaming inside its mind, suffering alone in the dark for years or decades or longer. This is the first dark secret. The vessels were never children to the Pale King. They were a manufacturing process, and the one that succeeded was rewarded with eternal suffering. The second secret is about the Pale King's philosophy, and it reveals something disturbing about his character. The Pale King's words found in the White Palace are "no cost too great." This is his philosophy, his justification, his reason for everything he did. The kingdom was worth any price, any sacrifice, any amount of suffering. But let's examine what this actually means. No cost too great doesn't mean we'll do whatever it takes. It means there is no cost that would be too much to pay. It means that no amount of suffering, no number of deaths, no magnitude of sacrifice would ever make him stop and say, "This is too much." This is not the philosophy of a desperate king trying to save his kingdom. This is the philosophy of someone who has decided that the end justifies any means, that the goal is so important that morality becomes irrelevant, that the kingdom's survival is worth literally anything. And what did the Pale King sacrifice for this philosophy? Thousands of his own children, the Hollow Knight's sanity and freedom, the dreamers' lives, the stability of the kingdom itself, because his plan failed and the infection spread anyway. But here's the darker implication. If no cost is too great, then the Pale King would have kept going. If the vessel plan had failed completely, if the Hollow Knight hadn't been able to contain the radiance at all, he would have tried something else, sacrificed something else, paid an even greater cost. There's no limit to what he would have done, no line he wouldn't cross, no sacrifice he wouldn't make, because he had decided fundamentally that the kingdom was worth anything. This makes the Pale King not a tragic hero, but us think closer to a fanatic. He wasn't trying to save his people, he was trying to preserve his kingdom, his creation, his legacy, and he was willing to destroy anything and anyone to do it. The White Palace itself reflects this philosophy. It's filled with deadly traps, buzzsaws and spikes that kill instantly. This is the Pale King's home, his seat of power, and it's designed to kill anyone who enters without permission. It's not a palace, it's a fortress, a death trap, a place that values security over hospitality, control over compassion. The Path of Pain, the secret area in the White Palace, is even more revealing. It's a brutally difficult platforming challenge, and the reward at the end is just a memory, just a moment from the past. But the challenge itself tells us something about the Pale King. He valued perfection, valued the ability to overcome impossible obstacles, valued proving yourself through suffering. The Path of Pain is named appropriately. It's not the path of challenge or the path of skill. It's the path of pain, because pain is the point, suffering is the test, and only those who can endure it are worthy. This is the Pale King's worldview. Suffering is necessary, sacrifice is required, and no cost is too great. He built a kingdom on this philosophy, and the kingdom fell because of it. But here's the darkest part. The Pale King knew his plan was flawed. The memory at the end of the Path of Pain shows him was the Hollow Knight, and the Hollow Knight looks back at him. The idea instilled, the moment when the vessel that was supposed to be empty developed a bond, developed awareness, developed something that made it not truly hollow. The plan had already failed, and he sealed it anyway. He knew it wouldn't work. He knew the Hollow Knight would suffer. He knew the seal would eventually fail, and he did it anyway because he had already committed, because he had already sacrificed too much to turn back, because admitting failure would mean admitting that all those dead children, all that suffering, all those costs were paid for nothing. No cost too great becomes, the cost has already been paid, so we have to continue. The philosophy that justified the initial sacrifice becomes the trap that prevents him from stopping, that forces him to keep going even when he knows it's futile. This is the second dark secret. The Pale King wasn't trying to save the kingdom. He was trying to justify the cost he'd already paid, and he sealed the Hollow Knight knowing it would fail, because admitting failure would mean admitting that everything he'd done was wrong. The third secret is about the infection, and it's more complex than it appears. The infection is presented as the Radiance's revenge, her attempt to reclaim her worshippers, her response to being forgotten. And that's true, but it's not the whole truth. The infection doesn't restore bugs to what they were under the Radiance's rule. It doesn't give them back the unity they had, doesn't reconnect them to her light, doesn't return them to the instinctual peace they knew before consciousness. Instead, the infection breaks them. It traps them in a state between consciousness and instinct, where they have just enough awareness to suffer, but not enough to resist. They're not unified with the Radiance. They're corrupted by her, twisted into something that serves her purposes but doesn't benefit them at all. This means the Radiance isn't trying to save her worshippers. She's using them as weapons, as tools, as a way to destroy the kingdom that forgot her. The bugs who are infected aren't being rescued. They're being sacrificed to the Radiance's rage. But here's the darker implication. The Radiance might not be able to do anything else. She's a goddess of unity, of collective consciousness, of instinctual connection. But the bugs have changed. They have individual minds now, individual identities, individual wills. They can't be reconnected to her unity because they're no longer the kind of beings that can exist in that unity. So the Radiance is trying to force them back, trying to override their consciousness, trying to make them into what they were. And because it's impossible, because you can't undo consciousness, the result is corruption, is breaking, is the infection. The Radiance isn't evil in the sense of choosing to cause suffering. She's evil in the sense of being unable to accept what's happened, unable to let go, unable to stop trying to reclaim something that can't be reclaimed. And the infection is the result of a goddess trying to do the impossible, trying to turn conscious beings back into instinctual ones and breaking them in the process. This makes every infected bug a victim twice over. First, they were taken from the Radiance's unity and given consciousness they didn't ask for. Then they were pulled back toward that unity and broken because they could no longer fit into it. The Pale King gave them consciousness, and it came with suffering. The Radiance tried to take that consciousness away, and it came with even more suffering. The bugs of Hallownest are caught between two higher beings, two gods, two incompatible visions of what they should be, and they're being destroyed by the conflict. But there's an even darker layer to this. The game suggests that the infection spreads through dreams, through the ancestral memory that still exists in bugs' minds. This means every bug in Hallownest carries the potential for infection within them, carries the memory of the Radiance in their very being, carries the connection that the Pale King tried to sever but couldn't completely erase. The Pale King's gift of consciousness didn't free the bugs from the Radiance, it just suppressed their connection to her, pushed it down into their subconscious, made it something they didn't remember but still carried. And when the Radiance reached out, that suppressed connection became the vector for the infection. This means the Pale King's plan was flawed from the beginning. You can't give bugs consciousness and expect them to completely forget the Radiance, because the connection to her is deeper than memory, deeper than thought, deeper than consciousness itself. It's in their nature, in their ancestry, in the fundamental structure of what they are. The only way to truly free bugs from the Radiance would be to change what they are at a fundamental level, to remake them into something that never had a connection to her. And the Pale King couldn't do that, or wouldn't do that, or didn't realize he needed to do that. So he gave them consciousness, and he thought that would be enough. And it wasn't. And the infection spread, and the kingdom fell. This is the third dark secret. The infection is the inevitable result of the Pale King's gift. You can't give bugs consciousness without severing their connection to the Radiance, and you can't sever that connection completely. So the infection was always going to happen. The kingdom was doomed from the moment it was founded. The fourth secret is about the soul sanctum, and it reveals the depths of desperation and cruelty that the infection drove people to. The Soul Master believed he could use soul to resist the infection. His theory was that if he gathered enough soul, if he became powerful enough, he could protect himself and others from the Radiance's influence. To test this theory, he experimented on citizens. He harvested their soul, drained their life energy, killed them to take what they had and add it to his own. The soul sanctum is filled with the corpses of his victims, bugs who came seeking help and were used as test subjects. But here's what the game doesn't explicitly tell you. The Soul Master's experiments worked. He's not infected. He's maintained his mind, his consciousness, his sense of self. He's bloated with stolen soul, insane with obsession, but he's not corrupted by the Radiance. This means his theory was correct. Soul can resist the infection. Gathering enough soul, becoming powerful enough, can protect you from the Radiance's influence. But the cost is staggering. The Soul Master killed hundreds of bugs to achieve this protection, and his method only works for him. He can't share it, can't teach it, can't save anyone else. He's protected himself at the cost of everyone he experimented on. This raises a dark question. If the Soul Master's method had been scalable, If he could have taught others how to gather soul and resist the infection, would it have been worth it? Would it be acceptable to kill some bugs to save others? Where's the line between necessary sacrifice and mass murder? The game doesn't answer this question. It presents the Soul Master as a villain, as someone who went too far, as someone whose obsession led him to commit atrocities. But it also shows us that his method worked, that he found a solution, that he proved it was possible to resist the infection through soul. The Soul Sanctum is full of follies, the reanimated corpses of the Soul Master's victims. They're not infected, but they're not alive either. They're something in between, animated by soul, driven by the remnants of what they were, attacking anyone who enters the sanctum. These follies are the Soul Master's failures, the bugs whose soul he harvested, but who didn't die cleanly, who lingered in some form, who became twisted by the process. They're evidence of his experiments, proof of his crimes, and they're still there, still attacking, still suffering in whatever way reanimated corpses can suffer. The Soul Master himself is a boss fight, and when you defeat him, he doesn't drop anything useful. His research dies with him. All that knowledge, all that experimentation, all those deaths, and it accomplishes nothing except keeping one bug uninfected at the cost of hundreds of others. But here's the darkest part. The Soul Master isn't unique. The game implies that other scholars in the Soul Sanctum were conducting similar experiments, that the entire institution became corrupted by desperation, that the pursuit of a cure led to atrocities throughout the building. The Soul Sanctum was Hallownest's centre for learning, for research, for the advancement of knowledge, and when the infection came, it became a charnel house, a place where scholars murdered citizens in the name of finding a solution, where the pursuit of knowledge became divorced from ethics, where desperation justified any action. This is the fourth dark secret. The infection didn't just corrupt bugs directly. It corrupted the kingdom's institutions, drove people to commit atrocities in the name of finding a cure, turned places of learning into places of horror. The Soul Master is just the most visible example of a rot that spread throughout Hallownest's scholarly community. The fifth secret is about the Dreamers, and it's about the nature of their sacrifice. Lurien, Monomon, and Hera agreed to become Dreamers, to enter eternal sleep, to have their dreams become the locks on the temple of the Black Egg. They did this knowing they would never wake up, knowing they were giving up their lives, their futures, everything they might have been. But here's what the game doesn't emphasize. The Dreamers aren't just asleep. They're not resting peacefully, not dreaming pleasant dreams, not in some kind of suspended animation where they're unaware of time passing. They're conscious, they're aware, they're experiencing their sleep, their dreams, their role as locks on the temple. They've been doing this for years, possibly decades, possibly longer, and they'll continue doing it forever, or until someone breaks the seals, or until the Hollow Knight fails completely and the temple opens on its own. Think about what this means. Lurien has been in his tower, asleep but aware, watching over the City of Tears in his dreams, unable to move or act or do anything except maintain the seal, for years, possibly for decades. Monomon has been in the archives, asleep but aware, surrounded by all the knowledge she gathered, unable to read or learn or do anything except maintain the seal, for years, possibly for decades. Hera has been in Deepnest, asleep but aware, separated from her daughter Hornet, unable to rule or protect or do anything except maintain the seal, for years, possibly for decades. This isn't a sacrifice where you die and it's over. This is a sacrifice where you're trapped in a state between life and death, conscious but unable to act, aware but unable to change anything, existing solely to serve a function for an indefinite period of time. It's a living death. It's being buried alive in your own mind. It's being a lock, a thing, a tool, while still being aware that you're a person, that you have thoughts and feelings and desires that will never be fulfilled. And here's the darker part. They knew this when they agreed. The Pale King didn't lie to them, didn't trick them, didn't hide what the sacrifice would entail. They understood that they would be conscious, that they would be aware, that they would be trapped in eternal sleep, and they agreed anyway. Why? Durian agreed out of loyalty to the Pale King. Monomon agreed out of duty to the kingdom. Hera agreed in exchange for a child, for Hornet, for the chance to have a daughter who would exist after she was gone. But knowing why they agreed doesn't make the sacrifice less horrifying. It makes it more so because it means they chose this. They walked into this trap with their eyes open. They condemned themselves to eternal conscious sleep because they believed it was necessary. And the worst part, it wasn't enough. The seal is failing. The hollow night is breaking. The infection is spreading again. The dreamer's sacrifice, their eternal conscious sleep, their living death, is accomplishing nothing except delaying the inevitable. When you kill the dreamers in the game, when you break the seals, you're not really killing them. You're releasing them, freeing them from their eternal sleep, ending their suffering. The game frames it as killing, as breaking something, as destroying the seals that protect the kingdom. But from the dreamer's perspective, it's mercy. It's finally being allowed to die, to end, to stop being a lock and become nothing instead. Monomon understood this. She created the Umu to guard her, but she also asked Quirrell to take her mask far away, to make it harder for anyone to reach her. She was protecting the seal, yes, but she was also making sure that if someone did reach her, if someone was strong enough to overcome all the obstacles, they would be worthy of breaking the seal, worthy of ending her suffering. Quirrell helps you break Monomon's seal. He helps you kill his teacher, the person he devoted his life to serving, and he does it because he understands that it's necessary, that the kingdom needs to end, that holding on is just prolonging everyone's suffering. After Monomon dies, Quirrell goes to the Blue Lake. He sits there, looking at the water, and he leaves his nail behind. The implication is dark and ambiguous. Has he fulfilled his purpose and chosen to end his life? Is he walking away from violence, retiring from being a warrior? Is he simply resting? The game never tells us. Quirrell is there, and then he's gone, and all that remains is his nail on the shore. This is the fifth dark secret. The dreamer's sacrifice wasn't a noble death. It was eternal conscious suffering, a living death that they endured for years or decades, and it wasn't enough to save the kingdom. They suffered for nothing, and when you free them, you're giving them the mercy of finally being allowed to die. The sixth secret is about Deepnest, and it reveals something disturbing about Hera and her people. Deepnest is the Spider Kingdom, dark and hostile and full of creatures that attack on sight. It's one of the most unsettling areas in the game, and it's designed to make you uncomfortable, to make you feel like you're somewhere you shouldn't be, somewhere that doesn't want you. But Deepnest wasn't always like this. When Hera was awake, when she was ruling her people, Deepnest was a kingdom, a civilization, a place with structure and purpose. The spiders were organized, had culture, had a queen who led them. When Hera became a dreamer, when she went to sleep, Deepnest lost its queen, and without her, the place fell into chaos. The spiders became hostile, territorial. attacking anything that enters. The kingdom collapsed into a collection of predators, creatures operating on instinct, without the organization that made them a civilization. This means Hera's sacrifice didn't just cost her, it cost her entire kingdom. Every spider in Deepnest, every creature that lives there, lost their queen, their leader, their organizing principle. And they've been living in chaos ever since for years or decades, without direction or purpose. But here's the darker implication. Hera knew this would happen. She knew that becoming a dreamer would mean abandoning her people, leaving them without a queen, condemning them to chaos. And she did it anyway, because the bargain was too important, because having Hornet was worth more to her than ruling Deepnest. This makes Hera's choice more complex. She didn't just sacrifice herself, she sacrificed her entire kingdom, her entire people, for the chance to have a child. She chose Hornet over Deepnest, chose personal desire over political responsibility, chose to create one life at the cost of abandoning thousands. Was this selfish? Was it understandable? Was it justified? The game doesn't judge, doesn't tell you what to think. It just shows you what happened and lets you decide. But there's another layer to this. Hera's bargain with the Pale King was that she would become a dreamer in exchange for a child. But why did the Pale King agree? What did he gain from this bargain? The answer is Deepnest's allegiance. Deepnest was independent, allied with Hallownest but not part of it, maintaining its own governance and culture. By agreeing to Hera's bargain, by giving her a child, the Pale King secured her cooperation, ensured she would become a dreamer, ensured the seal would have 3 locks instead of 2. This means Hornet's existence is political. She wasn't born out of love or desire or even biological necessity. She was born because her mother wanted a child badly enough to sacrifice her kingdom, and her father needed her mother's cooperation badly enough to give her one. Hornet is the product of a political bargain, a transaction between a queen and a king, a trade where Hera got a daughter and the Pale King got a dreamer. And Hornet has to live with this knowledge, has to understand that she exists because her mother traded her kingdom for her, has to carry the weight of being worth more to Hera than all of Deepnest. This is the 6th dark secret. Hera didn't just sacrifice herself to become a dreamer, she sacrificed her entire kingdom, abandoned her people to chaos, traded thousands of lives for one. And Hornet exists because of this trade, because her mother wanted her badly enough to pay any price, including the price of everyone else in Deepnest. The 7th secret is about the void, and it's about what the vessels really are. The game tells us that the vessels are void-given form, that they're beings created by throwing the Pale King's children into the abyss, that they're supposed to be empty, hollow, without mind or will. But the void has a will. The game confirms this. The void wants to be unified, wants all its scattered pieces to come together, wants to be whole. This means the void is not empty, not passive, not just a substance that can be shaped and used. The void is something. It has desires, has purposes, has a nature that exists independent of what anyone wants it to be. And the vessels, being void-given form, inherit this nature, inherit this will, inherit the void's desire to be unified. This means the vessels were never empty. They couldn't be empty, because they're made of something that has a will, that has desires, that has purposes. The Pale King's plan was flawed from the very beginning, not because the Hollow Knight developed a mind, but because the void itself has a mind, and anything made of void will inherit that mind. But here's the darker implication. If the vessels inherit the void's will, then what are they? Are they individuals, or are they pieces of the void? fragments of a larger whole that wants to reunify. The game suggests it's both. The vessels have individual experiences, individual journeys, individual choices. The knight explores Hallownest, makes decisions, grows stronger. The Hollow Knight was raised by the Pale King, trained, sealed away. Each vessel is distinct, separate, individual. But they're also connected. They're all void, all part of the same substance, all driven by the same fundamental desire to be unified. And in the Dream No More ending, when the knight channels all the siblings, when they become the Shade Lord, the individual vessels dissolve into the collective, become one entity, become the void unified. This means the vessel's individuality is temporary, illusory, or at least not permanent. They exist as separate beings, but they're always drawn toward unity, always pulled toward becoming one with their siblings, always moving toward the dissolution of their individual identities into the collective void. The knight's journey, then, is not about becoming a hero or saving the kingdom. It's about the void using a vessel to achieve its own purposes, to unify itself, to destroy the radiance who is opposed to it. The knight is not acting out of choice or heroism or even programming. The knight is acting out of the void's will, fulfilling the void's desires, serving the void's purposes. And when the knight defeats the radiance, when the void consumes her, when the siblings unify into the Shade Lord, the knight ceases to exist as an individual. It dissolves into the collective, becomes part of the whole, loses whatever individual identity it had. This is the seventh dark secret. The vessels are not individuals. They're fragments of the void, temporary manifestations of a larger entity, driven by purposes that aren't their own. And their ultimate fate is to dissolve back into the void, to lose their individuality, to become part of the unified whole that the void wants to be. The eighth secret is about the White Lady, and it reveals the depth of her guilt and the nature of her imprisonment. The White Lady has sealed herself in the Queen's gardens, bound by roots, imprisoned by her own choice. She tells you she's done this because she's afraid of what she might do, afraid of her own nature, afraid of the part of her that participated in creating the vessels. But here's what this really means. The White Lady is afraid she'll create more vessels. She's afraid that if she's free, if she's not bound, she'll conceive more children with the Pale King or with someone else, and those children will be thrown into the abyss, and the cycle will continue. She's not afraid of being violent or destructive in the traditional sense. She's afraid of her own fertility, afraid of her ability to create life, afraid that creating life will lead to more death, more suffering, more vessels dying in the abyss. This is a deeply disturbing form of self-imprisonment. She's not locked away because she's dangerous to others in the way we usually think of danger. She's locked away because her fundamental nature, her ability to give birth, has been turned into something horrifying, something that produces suffering, something that needs to be suppressed. The White Lady is a root goddess, a being associated with growth and life and fertility. These are supposed to be positive qualities, life-giving qualities, qualities that create and nurture. But in the context of the vessels, her fertility became a tool for mass death. Her ability to give birth became a way to produce children designed to die. She's imprisoned herself because she can't trust herself, because she knows that her nature, her fundamental being, has been corrupted by what she did, has been turned into something that produces suffering instead of life. But here's the darker layer. The White Lady is still alive. The Pale King is dead, but she's still here, still bound, still imprisoned. This means she's been in the Queen's gardens alone, bound by roots for years or decades, possibly since the Pale King died, possibly since the vessels were created. She'd been sitting there, conscious and aware, thinking about what she did, remembering the thousands of children she conceived and allowed to be thrown into the abyss, carrying the guilt of every vessel that died, every child that suffered, every life that was created only to be destroyed. This is not a punishment imposed from outside. This is self-imposed penance, self-inflicted suffering, a choice to remain imprisoned because she believes she deserves it, because she can't forgive herself, because the guilt is so overwhelming that binding herself with roots seems like the only appropriate response. When you meet the White Lady, she recognizes you as one of her children, one of the vessels, one of the ones who was thrown away. She calls you child, with what seems like affection, but there's also guilt in that recognition, acknowledgement that you're one of the thousands she helped create and condemn. She gives you half of the King Soul charm, the symbol of Hallownest's rulers. But she also tells you that you can take it to the abyss, to the place where you were born, to the place where your siblings died. She knows what will happen if you do this, knows that the King Soul will transform into the Void Heart, knows that you'll become something more than just a vessel. Is she trying to help you? Is she trying to atone? Is she trying to give you the power to end what she and the Pale King started? The game doesn't tell us her motivations, doesn't explain why she gives you the King Soul, doesn't clarify whether this is redemption or just another manipulation. But the fact that she's still here, still bound, still imprisoned, suggests that whatever she's doing, it's not enough to ease her guilt. She's given you the King Soul, she's helped you become powerful enough to challenge the Radiance, but she's still bound, still imprisoned, still unable to forgive herself. This is the 8th dark secret. The White Lady's imprisonment is self-imposed penance for creating the vessels. She's bound herself because she can't trust her own nature, because her ability to give life has been turned into a tool for death, because the guilt of what she did is so overwhelming that she believes she deserves to be imprisoned forever. The 9th secret is about Hornet, and it's about the burden she carries. Hornet is the daughter of the Pale King and Hera the Beast. She's not a vessel, not void, not hollow. She's alive, conscious, with thoughts and feelings and a voice. She's the only child of the Pale King who was meant to live, who was created to be a person rather than a tool. But Hornet's existence comes with a terrible burden. She's the reason her mother became a dreamer. Hera agreed to eternal sleep in exchange for Hornet's existence. This means Hornet's life cost her mother's freedom, cost Hera everything she was and could have been. Hornet knows this. She understands that she exists because of a bargain, that her mother traded her life for Hornet's existence, that Hera is asleep in deepness because she wanted a daughter badly enough to pay any price. This is an impossible burden to carry. How do you live with the knowledge that your existence cost your mother everything? How do you justify being alive when your mother is trapped in eternal sleep because she wanted you to exist? Hornet can't save her mother. Breaking Hera's seal would open the Temple of the Black Egg, would release the Hollow Knight, would spread the infection further. Saving Hera means dooming the kingdom. Keeping the kingdom safe means leaving Hera in eternal sleep. Hornet is trapped between her mother and the kingdom, between personal love and political necessity, between wanting to free Hera and knowing that doing so would be catastrophic. And she's alone in this. Her father is dead. Her mother is asleep. Her sibling, the Hollow Knight, is sealed away. She's the only one left who remembers the full story, who understands what happened, who carries the weight of Hallownest's history. Hornet guards the kingdom's ruins. She tests anyone who enters, fights them, make sure they're strong enough for what's coming. She's looking for someone who can end this, who can fix what her father broke, who can free her sibling from its torment. But here's the dark part. Hornet knows that ending this means killing her mother. Breaking the seals, opening the temple, reaching the Hollow Night. All of this requires killing the dreamers, including Hera. Hornet is looking for someone strong enough to kill her mother, because that's what's necessary to save the kingdom. When you kill Hera, when you break her seal, Hornet doesn't stop you. She doesn't try to protect her mother, doesn't fight you to prevent Hera's death. She lets it happen because she understands that it's necessary, that the kingdom needs this, that holding on is just prolonging everyone's suffering. But that doesn't make it easy. That doesn't make it painless. Hornet has to watch her mother die, has to allow it to happen, has to accept that the person who wanted her to exist badly enough to trade everything for it is now gone, and Hornet is the one who enabled it by testing you, by making sure you are strong enough, by guiding you toward this outcome. In the endings where you take the Hollow Knight's place, Hornet tries to stop you. She realizes what you're about to do, understands that you're condemning yourself to the same fate as your sibling, and she screams, "No!" as the door seals. Why does she try to stop you? Because she's already lost her mother, already lost her father, already lost one sibling to the seal. She can't bear to lose another, can't bear to watch the cycle continue, can't bear to see someone else sealed away in eternal suffering. But she fails. The door seals anyway. And in the sealed siblings ending, she's trapped inside with you, sealed in the temple in the dark, with a sibling who's now a prison for a goddess. She's alive, conscious, and she's going to be there for a very long time, experiencing the same fate as the dreamers, the same eternal conscious imprisonment that her mother endured. This is the 9th dark secret. Hornet's existence cost her mother everything, and Hornet has to live with that knowledge, has to enable her mother's death to save the kingdom, has to carry the burden of being worth more to Hera than Hera's own life and freedom. The 10th secret is about the Abyss itself, and it's about what the Void really wants. The Abyss is the deepest part of Hallownest, the place where the Void exists in its purest form. It's dark, completely dark, and descending into it requires a special lantern that can illuminate the darkness. But the Abyss is not just a place, it's alive in some sense. It's the Void's home, the Void's source, the place where the Void is most concentrated and most powerful. And the Void has a will, has desires, has purposes. The game tells us that the Void wants to be unified. But what does this mean? What is the Void trying to achieve? What happens when the Void is unified? The Dream No More ending shows us. When the night channels all the siblings, when the vessels unify, they become the Shade Lord, a massive entity of pure void that destroys the radiance. The Shade Lord is the Void unified, the Void at its full power, the Void as it wants to be. But the Shade Lord is not benevolent. It's not evil either, but it's not good. It's a force, a power, an entity that exists to oppose the radiance, to destroy light, to consume gods. It's the Void's true nature revealed, and that nature is destructive, consuming, opposed to everything the radiance represents. This means the Void is not neutral. It's not just a substance that can be shaped and used. It has its own agenda, its own purposes, its own goals, and those goals involve destroying the radiance, consuming light, opposing the gods. The Pale King tried to use the Void to contain the radiance, but the Void doesn't want to contain her. It wants to destroy her, and by creating the vessels, by giving the Void form and purpose and the ability to act in the physical world, The Pale King gave the Void the tools it needed to achieve its goals. The Knight is not a hero choosing to save the kingdom. The Knight is the Void's instrument, the Void's weapon, the Void's way of achieving what it wants. Every action the Knight takes, every choice the player makes, is moving toward the Void's goal: unification and the destruction of the Radiance. This recontextualizes the entire game. You're not playing as a hero, you're playing as a fragment of an ancient force that's using you to achieve its own purposes. The Knight has no voice, no expressed thoughts, no clear motivations, because the Knight is not really an individual. It's a piece of the Void, animated by the Void's will, driven by the Void's desires. And when the Knight defeats the Radiance, when the Void consumes her, when the siblings unify into the Shade Lord, the Knight's individual existence ends. It dissolves back into the Void, becomes part of the unified whole, ceases to be a separate entity. This is not a happy ending for the Knight. It's not even really an ending for the Knight, because the Knight stops existing as an individual. It's an ending for the Void, a victory for the Void, the achievement of what the Void has wanted all along. But here's the darkest implication. If the Void wanted to be unified and wanted to destroy the Radiance, then the Void might have been manipulating events all along. The vessel's creation gave the Void form. The Hollow Knight's failure gave the Void a reason to act. The Knight's return gave the Void an opportunity to achieve its goals. Did the Void influence these events? Did it ensure that the Hollow Knight would fail, that the Knight would return, that everything would unfold in a way that led to the Void's unification and the Radiance's destruction? The game doesn't answer this. But the possibility is there, lurking in the implications, suggesting that the entire tragedy of Hallownest might have been orchestrated by the Void, that the Pale King's plan might have been doomed from the beginning, not because of his mistakes, but because the Void was using him, using the vessels, using everything to achieve its own purposes. This is the 10th dark secret. The Void is not a tool or a substance. It's an entity with its own will, its own goals, its own agenda. And everything that happens in Hollow Knight might be the Void achieving what it wanted all along: unification and the destruction of the Radiance. The 11th secret is about the Pale King's death, and it's about what his corpse tells us. The Pale King's corpse is in the White Palace, sitting on his throne, impaled by his own weapon. The game never tells us exactly how he died, whether it was suicide, whether it was an accident, whether something else happened. But the position of the corpse tells us something. He's sitting on his throne, in his seat of power, in the place where he ruled. He's not fleeing, not hiding, not trying to escape. He's in the throne room, facing forward, as if he's still ruling even in death, and he's impaled by his own weapon, not killed by an enemy, not struck down by the infection, not murdered by a rebel or an assassin. He died by his own weapon, by the tool he used to rule, by the symbol of his power. This suggests suicide. The Pale King, realizing that his plan had failed, that the kingdom was doomed, that everything he'd sacrificed had been for nothing, chose to end his own life. He sat on his throne, took his own weapon, and impaled himself, dying in the seat of power he'd built, surrounded by the palace he'd created, alone in the dream realm he'd retreated to. But there's another possibility. The weapon might have been placed there after his death, might be symbolic rather than literal, might represent something other than the physical cause of death. The White Palace is in the dream realm after all, and things in dreams don't always follow physical logic. But even if the weapon is symbolic, the symbolism is clear. The Pale King was killed by his own power, by his own choices, by his own philosophy. No cost too great became the weapon that destroyed him, because the cost was too great, because the sacrifices didn't work, because everything he'd done had failed. The Pale King died alone. The White Lady was in the Queen's gardens, bound and imprisoned. The dreamers were asleep. The hollow night was sealed away. The kingdom was falling apart, and the Pale King was in his palace, in the dream realm, isolated from everything, unable to fix what he'd broken, unable to save what he'd tried to preserve. His death is not heroic. It's not tragic in the classical sense. It's just empty. He died having failed, having sacrificed everything for nothing, having created a kingdom that was doomed from the beginning, having paid costs that were too great and achieved nothing with them. The White Palace remains in the dream realm a monument to the Pale King's perfection, his control, his philosophy, but it's empty now, filled with deadly traps guarded by constructs, containing nothing but the corpse of its creator and the memory of what he tried to do. This is the 11th dark secret. The Pale King died alone, having failed completely, killed by his own philosophy, his own choices, his own refusal to accept that some costs are too great. His corpse sits on his throne in an empty palace in the dream realm, a monument to the futility of his sacrifices. The 12th secret is about what happens to infected bugs, and it's darker than the game shows. When bugs become infected, they develop orange pustules. Their eyes glow orange, and they become hostile and aggressive. The game shows us this transformation, shows us bugs who were once citizens becoming enemies, becoming threats, becoming things you have to kill. But what's happening inside their minds? What does the infection feel like from the inside? The game gives us hints. Infected bugs are described as being in a state between consciousness and instinct, retaining just enough awareness to suffer but not enough to resist. They're not mindless zombies, not completely gone, not entirely consumed. They're still there, somewhere, trapped inside their own corrupted bodies. This means infected bugs are aware of what's happening to them. They know they're infected, know they're losing control, know they're becoming something else. But they can't stop it, can't resist it, can't do anything except experience the corruption as it takes over. Imagine being trapped inside your own body, watching yourself become hostile, watching yourself attack people you used to know, watching yourself lose everything that made you yourself, and being unable to stop it, unable to resist, unable to do anything except watch and suffer. This is what the infection does. It doesn't kill bugs cleanly. It doesn't end their consciousness. It traps them inside their own corrupted bodies, makes them watch as they lose themselves, makes them experience the transformation from person to monster. And it's not quick. The infection spreads slowly, progressively. Bugs don't become fully infected instantly. They go through stages, gradual corruption, slow loss of self. They have time to realize what's happening, time to be afraid, time to suffer. Mila is the clearest example of this. When you first meet her, she's cheerful, optimistic, singing while she works. If you return later, she's infected, but she's still mining, still going through the motions of what she used to do. If you return even later, she's fully infected and attacks you. This progression shows us that Mila was aware during her infection. She knew what was happening, knew she was losing herself, knew she was becoming something else, and she couldn't stop it. She just kept mining, kept doing what she had always done, as the infection slowly consumed her. When you kill infected bugs, you're not just killing enemies. You're mercy-killing people who are trapped inside their own corrupted bodies, people who are suffering, people who would probably thank you for ending it if they could still speak. But the game doesn't frame it this way. It frames infected bugs as enemies, as threats, as things to be killed without hesitation. And you kill hundreds of them, thousands of them, as you explore Hallownest, as you fight your way through the ruins. Each one was a person. Each one had a life, had thoughts, had relationships. Each one is suffering, trapped, aware of what they've become, and you kill them because that's what the game requires, because they're in your way, because they're hostile. This is the 12th dark secret. Infected bugs are not mindless. They're trapped inside their own corrupted bodies, aware of what's happening to them, suffering as they lose themselves, unable to resist or escape. And when you kill them, you're ending that suffering. But you're also ending whatever remains of the person they used to be. The 13th secret is about the collector, and it reveals something disturbing about obsession and preservation. The collector is a strange bug who lives in the Tower of Love, surrounded by jars containing living creatures. He's captured bugs, grubs, and other beings, preserving them in glass containers, keeping them alive but imprisoned. The collector isn't infected. He's not corrupted by the radiance, not driven mad by the infection. He's doing this because he wants to, because he believes he's preserving these creatures, protecting them, keeping them safe from the chaos outside. But what he's actually doing is trapping living beings in jars, keeping them imprisoned forever, denying them freedom or death. The creatures in his jars are alive but unable to move, unable to escape, unable to do anything except exist in their glass prisons. This is preservation taken to its darkest extreme. The collector loves these creatures so much that he's willing to trap them forever, to deny them agency, to turn them into objects in his collection. His love is possessive, controlling, ultimately destructive. The Tower of Love is named ironically. It's not a place of love in any healthy sense. It's a place where love has become obsession, where caring has become imprisonment, where the desire to protect has become the desire to control. When you fight the collector, he summons the creatures from his jars to attack you. He's using the beings he claims to love as weapons, as tools, as things to be deployed against threats. This reveals the truth of his love. It's not about the creature's well-being. It's about his need to possess them, to control them, to keep them as part of his collection. But here's the darker layer. The collector might be trying to save these creatures from the infection. He might genuinely believe that keeping them in jars is better than letting them roam free in a kingdom that's falling apart, that's being consumed by the Radiance's corruption. If this is true, then the collector is doing something horrible for what he believes are good reasons. He's imprisoning creatures to save them, trapping them to protect them, denying them freedom because he thinks freedom will lead to their destruction. This makes the collector not a simple villain, but a reflection of the Pale King's philosophy taken to its logical extreme. The Pale King believed no cost was too great to save the kingdom. The collector believes no imprisonment is too cruel to save the creatures he loves. Both are willing to cause suffering in the name of preservation. Both are willing to trap living beings for what they believe is a greater good. The grubs you rescue throughout the game are part of the collector's collection. He's captured them, imprisoned them, kept them in jars throughout Hallownest. When you free them, when you break the jars and let them return to the Grub Father, you're undoing the collector's work, releasing the creatures he tried to preserve. But here's the darkest part. When you return all the grubs to the Grub Father, when you've freed every single one, something disturbing happens. The Grub Father becomes bloated, surrounded by empty shells. At first glance it looks like he's eaten his children, like your heroic rescue led to their deaths. But the truth is more ambiguous and perhaps even darker. The shells are likely cocoons from metamorphosis, the grubs transforming into their adult form, grubberflies. This is a natural life cycle. The grub father is bloated because he's protecting them during their transformation. But here's what makes this dark. You never see the grubberflies emerge. You never see the grubs complete their transformation. You just see the bloated grub father and the empty shells, and you're left to wonder, did they successfully metamorphose? Are they still inside him? Is this protection or consumption? Is this a natural process or something that went wrong? The game doesn't tell you. It doesn't clarify. It doesn't show you the outcome. It just shows you something that looks disturbing, that could be interpreted multiple ways, that leaves you uncertain about whether your heroism helped or harmed. And that uncertainty is the dark secret. You freed the grubs believing you were saving them. You returned them to their father believing it was the right thing to do. And now you don't know if you helped them complete their life cycle or delivered them to something else entirely. The collector's imprisonment was cruel, but at least you knew the grubs were alive in those jars. Now you're not sure what they are at all. This is the 13th dark secret. The collector's obsessive imprisonment was cruel, but freeing his captives led to an outcome you can't understand or verify. Love can become possession, protection can become imprisonment, and sometimes the creatures you save end up in situations you can't interpret, leaving you uncertain whether you helped or harmed them. The 14th secret is about Quirrell, and it's about the weight of memory and purpose. Quirrell is one of the few friendly characters in Hollow Knight, a scholar who's exploring Hallownest, trying to understand what happened, trying to piece together the kingdom's history. He's kind, thoughtful, curious, and he helps you at several points in your journey. But Quirrell's story is darker than it initially appears. He's Monomon's student devoted to her, carrying her mask far away from the archives to protect the seal. But he's also lost his memory, forgotten who he is, forgotten his purpose, forgotten everything except a vague sense that he needs to be somewhere, needs to do something. When Quirrell regains his memory, when he remembers who he is and what his purpose was, he helps you break Monomon's seal. He helps you kill his teacher, the person he devoted his life to serving, the person who gave him purpose and meaning. Why does he do this? Because he understands that it's necessary, that the kingdom needs to end, that holding on is just prolonging everyone's suffering. He loves Monomon, but he loves her enough to let her die, to free her from her eternal sleep, to end her suffering even though it means losing her. After Monomon dies, Quirrell goes to the Blue Lake. He sits there looking at the water, contemplating what he's done, what he's lost, what remains of his life now that his purpose is fulfilled, and he leaves his nail behind, his weapon, the tool he used to protect himself, the symbol of his ability to fight and survive. He leaves it on the shore, and then he's gone. The game doesn't show us what happens next. The implication is dark and deliberately ambiguous. Is Quirrell choosing to end his life? Has he fulfilled his purpose and decided he has nothing left? Or is he laying down his weapon, choosing peace over violence, walking away from being a warrior? Is he simply resting by the lake, contemplating what comes next? The game never confirms. Team Cherry left this intentionally unclear, but the possibility of suicide is there, hanging over the scene like a shadow. The idea that Quirrell might have chosen death after his purpose was fulfilled, that he might have believed life without Monomon wasn't worth living, that he might have walked into the lake and never come back. This is presented peacefully in the game. The blue lake is beautiful, serene, calm. Quirrell's nail resting on the shore is not a scene of violence or despair. It's quiet, contemplative, almost gentle. But the ambiguity makes it darker because you're left wondering, left uncertain, left to imagine what might have happened after he left his nail behind. This reflects a deeply dark philosophy, that life without purpose is not worth living, that once you've fulfilled your function, you should end yourself, that existence is only valuable if it serves some greater goal. Quirrell's entire life was devoted to Monomon. He served her, protected her, carried her mask across the kingdom, and when she died, when his service was complete, he had nothing left. No other relationships, no other goals, no other reasons to exist. This is the cost of devotion, the dark side of purpose. When your entire life is built around serving someone or something, when you have no identity outside of that service, what happens when the service ends? What happens when the person you devoted yourself to is gone? Quirrell's answer might be to end his own life, or it might be something else. The game never tells us, and that ambiguity is itself dark because it forces us to wonder, to imagine, to consider the possibility that a character we cared about might have chosen death over a life without purpose, and it's deeply sad either way. Whether Quirrell died or simply walked away, he's gone. He could have found new purpose, could have explored the kingdom further, could have helped rebuild or document or do something else with his life. But after Monomon's death, after his purpose was fulfilled, he left his nail behind and disappeared, and we never see him again. This is the 14th dark secret. Quirrell's peaceful ending at the Blue Lake is ambiguous, possibly suicide, possibly something else, but definitely the end of his story. The game presents it peacefully, but leaves the truth unclear, forcing us to wonder whether he chose death because his purpose was fulfilled and he had nothing left to live for. The ambiguity reveals a dark philosophy about the relationship between purpose and the value of life, and leaves us uncertain about what happened to someone we cared about. The 15th secret is about the Mantis Lords, and it reveals something about honour, tradition, and the cost of maintaining both. The Mantis Lords rule the Mantis village, maintaining order among the Mantis tribe, upholding their traditions and their code of honour. They're warriors, proud and skilled, and they've kept their people independent from Hallownest, allied but not subservient. When the infection came, the Mantis Lords made a choice. They would seal the entrance to Deepnest, preventing the infected creatures from entering their village, protecting their people by isolating themselves from the rest of the kingdom. This worked. The Mantis village is not infected. The Mantis warriors are still themselves, still following their code, still maintaining their traditions. The Mantis Lord's choice saved their people, but it also meant abandoning the rest of Hallownest. The Mantis Lords could have helped fight the infection, could have used their warriors to protect other areas, could have tried to save the kingdom. Instead, they sealed themselves away, protected their own people, and let everyone else suffer. This is survival through isolation, safety through abandonment. The Mantis Lords chose their tribe over the kingdom, chose their people over everyone else, chose to survive by letting others die. Is this wrong? Is it selfish? Or is it pragmatic, realistic, the only choice that made sense? The game doesn't judge. It presents the Mantis Lords as honourable, as worthy opponents, as leaders who made a difficult choice and succeeded in protecting their people. But there's a darker layer to this. One of the Mantis warriors, the Traitor Lord, disagreed with this choice. He believed the Mantis tribe should accept the infection, should embrace the Radiance's power, should use it to become stronger. The other Mantis Lords exiled him for this. They cast him out, declared him a traitor, sent him to live in the Queen's gardens with his followers. And other Mantis warriors followed him into exile, punished for their beliefs, condemned to live as outcasts because they disagreed with the Mantis Lord's choice. This reveals the cost of the Mantis Lord's honour. They maintain their traditions, their code, their way of life, but they do so by exiling anyone who disagrees, by casting out anyone who challenges their choices, by enforcing conformity through banishment. One of these exiled Mantis traitors is a boss fight in the Queen's gardens. She's fast, aggressive, skilled, everything a Mantis warrior should be. But she's also alone, exiled, separated from her tribe because she followed the traitor lord, because she disagreed with the Mantis Lord's choice. When you kill her, when you defeat her in combat, you're not killing a villain or a monster. You're killing someone who was punished for her beliefs, someone who was exiled for disagreeing with the Mantis Lords, someone who was cast out and left to survive alone in a hostile environment. The Mantis Lord's honour is real. Their code is genuine. Their traditions are meaningful. But maintaining all of this requires exile, requires casting out anyone who doesn't conform, requires punishing dissent with banishment. This is the cost of tradition, the dark side of honour. To maintain their way of life, the Mantis Lords have to enforce it strictly, have to exile anyone who challenges it, have to choose their code over individual members of their tribe. And the exiled Mantis traitors pay the price for this, live alone in the Queen's gardens, fight you when you enter their territory, and die without ever being able to return to their people, without ever being forgiven, without ever being allowed to come home. This is the 15th dark secret. The Mantis Lords saved their people by isolating themselves and abandoning the rest of Hallownest. Their honour and traditions are maintained through strict enforcement, through exiling anyone who disagrees, through choosing their code over individual members of their tribe. The exiled Mantis traitors die alone, punished for their beliefs, never allowed to return home. The 16th secret is about Lem, the relic seeker, and it reveals something about the futility of preservation and memory. Lem is a scholar who's come to Hallownest to study its history, to collect its relics, to preserve what remains of the kingdom's culture. He set up shop in the City of Tears, buying artifacts from you, studying them, trying to understand what they mean. Lem is one of the few characters who's actively trying to preserve Hallownest's history, to make sure the kingdom is remembered, to ensure that what happened here isn't lost to time. He's dedicated, passionate, genuinely interested in understanding the past. But here's the dark truth. It doesn't matter. Hallownest is dead. The kingdom has fallen. The culture is gone. The people are infected or dead or fled. And Lem's efforts to preserve their history, to collect their relics, to study their artifacts, won't change any of this. He's documenting a dead civilization, collecting the remnants of a fallen kingdom, trying to understand a culture that no longer exists. And when he's done, when he's collected all the relics and studied all the artifacts, what will he have accomplished? He'll have knowledge of something that's gone, understanding of something that can't be restored, memories of something that can't be brought back. This is the futility of preservation. You can document the past, you can collect its artifacts, you can study its culture, but you can't bring it back. You can't restore it. You can't make it live again. All you can do is remember, and remembering doesn't change the fact that it's gone. Lem knows this. He's not naive. He's not trying to restore Hallownest or bring back its people or rebuild its culture. He's just trying to make sure it's remembered, trying to ensure that someone knows what happened here, trying to preserve the knowledge even if the kingdom itself is lost. But who will he share this knowledge with? Who will read his studies? Who will care about Hallownest's history once he's gone? The game doesn't tell us. Lem is alone in his shop, buying relics from a silent night, studying artifacts in a dead city, preserving a history that no one else seems interested in. This makes his work both noble and tragic. He's doing something important, something valuable, something that matters. But it also doesn't matter, because the kingdom is gone. The people are dead, and his preservation of their history won't change any of this. There's a particular relic that reveals this futility most clearly, the Void Idol. When you give it to Lem, he studies it and realizes it's connected to the void, to the abyss, to something ancient and powerful that existed before Hallownest. This tells us that Hallownest was built on top of something older, that the Pale King's kingdom was not the first civilization in this place, that there were others before him who also fell, who also left relics behind, who also became history. And if Hallownest is just one more fallen kingdom in a long line of fallen kingdoms, if the Void Idol is a relic of something that came before, just as Lem's relics will be artifacts of Hallownest for whoever comes after, then what's the point? Civilizations rise and fall, kingdoms are built and destroyed, and all that remains are relics, artifacts, memories that fade with time. Lem is preserving Hallownest's history, but Hallownest itself was built on the ruins of something older. And someday something else will be built on Hallownest's ruins, and Lem's work will be forgotten, and the cycle will continue. This is the 16th dark secret. Lem's efforts to preserve Hallownest's history are both noble and futile. The kingdom is dead, the culture is gone, and documenting it won't bring it back. Hallownest is just one more fallen civilization in a long line of fallen civilizations, and someday it will be forgotten just like the ones that came before it. This 17th secret is about Elderbug, and it reveals the loneliness of being the last one left. Elderbug is the first character you meet in Hollow Knight, sitting in Dirtmouth, the small village above the ruins of Hallownest. He's old, tired, and he's been waiting in Dirtmouth for a long time, watching as the village emptied, as people left or died or went down into the kingdom and never came back. Elderbug is lonely. He tells you this directly, tells you that it's nice to have someone to talk to, that Dirtmouth used to have more people, but now it's just him and a few others. He's the last remnant of a community that's mostly gone, the last person who remembers what Dirtmouth used to be. But here's the darker truth. Elderbug is waiting for something that's never going to happen. He's waiting for people to come back, for the village to be lively again, for things to return to how they were, and they won't. The kingdom is dead. The people are gone. Dirtmouth will never be what it was. Elderbug knows this on some level. He's not naive. He's old enough to understand that things don't always get better, that sometimes what's lost stays lost. But he's still waiting, still hoping, still sitting in Dirtmouth because he doesn't know what else to do. This is the loneliness of being the last one left, of outliving your community, of watching everyone else leave or die while you remain. Elderbug didn't choose this. He didn't do anything wrong. He's just old, and he's still here, and everyone else is gone. When you return to Dirtmouth throughout the game, Elderbug is always there, always sitting in the same place, always willing to talk. He's grateful for your company, grateful that someone is still around, grateful that he's not completely alone. But you're not really there for him. You're there because Dirtmouth is a convenient resting point, a place to return to between explorations, a hub for the game's mechanics. You talk to Elderbug because he's there, not because you're seeking his company, and Elderbug knows this too. He knows you're not staying, knows you're going back down into the kingdom, knows you might not come back, but he's still grateful, still appreciative, still glad for whatever brief company you provide. This is the tragedy of Elderbug. He's lonely, he's the last one left, and even the brief companionship he gets from you is transactional, temporary, not really about him at all. He's grateful for scraps of attention, grateful for moments of company, grateful for anything that breaks the loneliness even briefly. In some endings, Elderbug remains in Dirtmouth, still waiting, still hoping, still alone. The kingdom's fate is decided. The infection is ended or continued, the radiance is defeated or remains, and Elderbug is still sitting in Dirtmouth, still lonely, still the last one left. His life doesn't change. The grand events of the game, the defeat of the radiance, the ending of the infection, the resolution of Hallownest's tragedy, none of it affects Elderbug. He's still in Dirtmouth, still alone, still waiting for something that will never come. This is the 17th Dark Secret. Elderbug is the loneliest character in Hollow Knight, the last remnant of a community that's gone, waiting for people who will never return, grateful for scraps of attention from a silent knight who's just passing through. His loneliness doesn't end, doesn't improve, doesn't change no matter what happens in the kingdom below. The 18th secret is about Cloth, and it reveals the tragedy of seeking a meaningful death. Cloth is a warrior who's come to Hallownest seeking a glorious death in battle. She's strong, brave, confident, and she wants to die fighting something worthy, something that will make her death meaningful, something that will prove her strength. This is not presented as suicidal ideation in the traditional sense. Cloth isn't depressed or hopeless. She's not trying to escape suffering or end pain. She's seeking glory, seeking meaning, seeking a death that matters. But it's still a death wish. Cloth is actively looking for something that will kill her, actively seeking out dangerous situations, actively hoping to die, as long as that death is glorious enough. Why? What drives someone to seek death, even a meaningful death, even a glorious death? The game doesn't tell us Cloth's backstory, doesn't explain what led her to this point, doesn't clarify why she values a meaningful death more than a meaningful life. But the implication is that Cloth doesn't believe her life has meaning. She's a warrior, and warriors are defined by their battles, by their victories, by their deaths. If she can't find a battle worthy of her, if she can't find an enemy strong enough to kill her, then what's the point of living? This is a deeply dark philosophy, that life is only valuable if it ends meaningfully, that existence is only worthwhile if it culminates in a glorious death, that living without the prospect of a worthy end is not worth doing. Cloth helps you fight several bosses throughout the game. She's genuinely helpful, genuinely strong, genuinely a good ally, but she's also using you, using your journey, using the battles you fight as opportunities to find her glorious death. And eventually she does. If you bring her to the fight with the traitor lord, she helps you, fights alongside you, and dies in the battle. Her last words are grateful, satisfied, happy that she found a worthy end, happy that her death meant something. The game presents this as a good ending for Cloth. She achieved what she wanted, died the way she hoped to die, found meaning in her death, but it's still a tragedy. Cloth is dead. She could have lived, could have found meaning in life rather than death, could have done more, experienced more, been more, but she chose death. She sought it out, found it, and died satisfied. And the game treats this as acceptable, as understandable, as perhaps even admirable. This reflects the same dark philosophy as Quirrell's ending, that life without purpose is not worth living, that existence is only valuable if it serves some greater meaning, that death can be preferable to life if that death is meaningful enough. But there's an even darker layer. What if Cloth's death wasn't meaningful? What if the Traitor Lord was just another boss, just another enemy, just another fight? What makes one death more meaningful than another? What makes dying in battle against the Traitor Lord more glorious than dying in battle against any other enemy? The meaning is arbitrary. Cloth decided the Traitor Lord was worthy, decided this battle was glorious, decided her death here mattered. But it's a subjective judgment, a personal decision, not an objective truth. This means Cloth died for meaning she created herself, for glory she defined herself, for a purpose she chose herself. And if the meaning is self-created, if the glory is self-defined, if the purpose is self-chosen, then couldn't she have found meaning in life just as easily as in death? But she didn't. She chose death. And the game lets her have it, lets her die satisfied, lets her achieve what she wanted, and it's presented as a good ending, as a successful conclusion to her arc, as something to be respected rather than mourned. This is the 18th Dark Secret. Cloth's quest for a meaningful death is a death wish, a choice to value dying over living, a philosophy that existence is only worthwhile if it ends gloriously. She achieves what she wants, dies satisfied, and the game treats this as acceptable, as admirable, as a good ending for her character. The 19th secret is about Tiso, and it reveals the cost of arrogance and the futility of seeking glory. Tiso is a warrior who's come to Hallownest to prove himself, to fight in the Colosseum of Fools, to demonstrate his strength and skill. He's confident, arrogant, dismissive of the kingdom's dangers, certain that he's strong enough to handle whatever Hallownest throws at him. He's wrong. Tiso dies in the Colosseum, killed by one of the challengers, his body left broken on the floor of the arena. You find his corpse there, along with his shield, evidence of his failure, proof that his confidence was misplaced. Tiso's death is not heroic. It's not meaningful, it's not glorious. He came to Hallownest seeking glory, seeking to prove himself, seeking to demonstrate his strength, and he died in an arena, killed by a challenge he wasn't prepared for, his body left to rot among the other failures. The Colosseum of Fools is named appropriately. It's a place where warriors come to fight, to prove themselves, to seek glory. And it's called the Colosseum of Fools because seeking glory through combat is foolish, because proving yourself through violence is pointless, because the warriors who come here are fools for thinking that fighting and dying in an arena means anything. Tiso is one of these fools. He came seeking glory and found death. He came seeking to prove himself and proved only that he wasn't as strong as he thought. He came seeking meaning and found meaninglessness, his corpse left on the floor of an arena in a dead kingdom, forgotten by everyone except the player who happens to find his body. This is the cost of arrogance, the price of overconfidence. Tiso believed he was strong enough, believed he could handle Hallownest's challenges, believed he would succeed where others failed, and he was wrong, and his wrongness killed him. But there's a darker layer. Even if Tiso had succeeded, even if he'd won in the Colosseum, even if he'd proven his strength, what would it have mattered? The Colosseum is in a dead kingdom. The audience is gone. The glory he sought is meaningless because there's no one left to witness it. No one left to care. No one left to remember. Tiso died seeking something that was already gone. The glory he wanted didn't exist anymore. The proof he sought had no audience. The meaning he was looking for was already lost. This makes his death even more tragic. He didn't just fail to achieve what he wanted. What he wanted was impossible to achieve, was already gone, was never going to be there no matter how strong he was or how well he fought. Tiso's shield remains in the Colosseum after his death. You can find it, can take it, can use it yourself. It's a good shield, a useful item, a piece of equipment that helps you in combat. But it's also all that remains of Tiso, all that's left of his quest for glory, all that proves he was ever here. A shield, a piece of equipment, a tool. That's Tiso's legacy. That's what his life amounted to. That's what remains after his death. Not glory, not meaning, not proof of his strength. Just a shield, left behind in an arena, picked up by someone else, used for purposes he never intended. This is the 19th dark secret. Tiso's quest for glory was doomed from the beginning. He died in the Colosseum of Fools, killed by his own arrogance, seeking something that no longer existed in a kingdom that was already dead. His legacy is a shield, a tool, a piece of equipment, nothing more. The 20th secret is about Zote, and it reveals something disturbing about delusion, incompetence, and the danger of false confidence. Zote is a self-proclaimed knight who's come to Hallownest seeking glory and adventure. He carried a weapon he calls Life Ender, wears armour, speaks with confidence about his strength and his achievements. But Zote is completely incompetent. His weapon is made of shellwood, too fragile to actually hurt anything. He gets trapped by vengeflies in the early game, requiring you to save him. He fails at every challenge he attempts, survives only because you rescue him repeatedly, and never acknowledges his own incompetence. Zote is delusional. He genuinely believes he's a great warrior, genuinely thinks he's strong and capable, genuinely sees himself as a hero. And this delusion is so complete, so total, that no amount of failure can break through it. Every time he fails, every time he needs to be rescued, every time he's proven wrong, he finds a way to reinterpret it, to maintain his self-image, to continue believing he's great. This would be merely pathetic if it only affected Zote. But his delusion is dangerous. In Dirtmouth, if you've saved him enough times, Bretta becomes infatuated with him. She sees him as a hero, as a great warrior, as someone worthy of admiration. And Zote encourages this, accepts her admiration, allows her to believe in his false image. Bretta's infatuation with Zote is based entirely on lies. She doesn't know he's incompetent, doesn't know his weapon is useless, doesn't know he's only alive because you kept saving him. She sees the image he projects and believes it's real, and Zote lets her. He doesn't correct her misconceptions, doesn't tell her the truth, doesn't admit his incompetence. He accepts her admiration, basks in it, allows her to worship a false image of who he is. This is emotional manipulation. Even if Zote doesn't consciously intend it, he's allowing someone to build their feelings on a foundation of lies, allowing someone to admire him for qualities he doesn't have, allowing someone to love an image that doesn't match reality. In Bretta's dreams, accessible through the dream nail, Zote becomes Grey Prince Zote, a powerful warrior who defeats you, who saves Bretta, who is everything Zote claims to be. This is how Bretta sees him, how she imagines him, how she wants him to be. But it's a lie. It's a fantasy. It's a dream that has no connection to reality. And Bretta is basing her feelings, her admiration, her infatuation on this fantasy, rather than on the real Zote. When you defeat Grey Prince Zote enough times in Bretta's dreams, She eventually becomes disillusioned. She realizes Zote isn't what she thought, realizes the image doesn't match reality, realizes she was wrong about him, and she leaves, abandons both Zote and Dirtmouth, goes off on her own. This is the inevitable result of building feelings on lies. Eventually reality breaks through, eventually the truth becomes undeniable. Eventually the fantasy collapses, and what's left is disappointment, disillusionment, and the realization that you were wrong about someone you cared about. But here's the darkest part. Zote never learns. Even after Bretta leaves, even after his incompetence has been demonstrated repeatedly, even after he's been proven wrong again and again, he continues believing he's a great warrior. His delusion is so complete that nothing can break it. Nothing can make him see reality. Nothing can force him to acknowledge the truth about himself. Zote is dangerous, not because he's strong, but because he's delusional and refuses to acknowledge it. He puts himself in danger, requires others to save him, manipulates people through his false image, and never takes responsibility for any of it. He's a cautionary tale about the danger of false confidence, about the harm that delusion can cause, about the cost of refusing to see yourself clearly. This is the 20th dark secret. Zote's delusion is complete and unbreakable. He's incompetent but believes he's great, weak but thinks he's strong, a danger to himself and others, but sees himself as a hero. He manipulates Bretta through his false image, and even when she becomes disillusioned and leaves, he never learns, never changes, never acknowledges the truth about himself. Let your breathing slow. Let the darkness settle around you. Let these secrets rest in your mind, not as burdens but as understanding, as knowledge, as the full truth of what Hollow Knight contains. We've explored 20 dark secrets tonight. 20 truths hidden in the game's lore. 20 implications buried in item descriptions and environmental details. 20 realities that exist beneath the surface of the story. The vessels were a manufacturing process. Children created to die. The Pale King's philosophy justified any cost even when he knew his plan had failed. The infection is the inevitable result of trying to give bugs consciousness while severing their connection to the radiance. The Soul Master found a cure, but it required mass murder. The dreamers suffer in eternal conscious sleep. Hera sacrificed her entire kingdom for one child. The Void has its own will and agenda. The White Lady imprisons herself out of guilt. Hornet carries the burden of costing her mother everything. The Abyss is alive and wants to be unified. The Pale King died alone, killed by his own philosophy. Infected bugs are conscious and suffering. The Collector's preservation is imprisonment. Quirrell chooses death after his purpose is fulfilled. The Mantis Lords maintain honour through exile. Lem preserves a history that will be forgotten. Elderbug is the loneliest character in the game. Cloth seeks a meaningful death. Tiso dies seeking glory that no longer exists. Zote's delusion is complete and dangerous. These are the dark secrets of Hollow Knight. Not the obvious tragedies, not the surface-level sadness, but the deep implications, the disturbing truths, the realities that make the game's world even darker than it initially appears. Sleep now. Let these secrets settle. Let the darkness be present without overwhelming you. Let your mind rest, knowing that you understand the full depth of what Hollow Knight contains. The game is dark. The lore is darker. And now you know why. Good night.